Welcome to Mishnah study. We're up to Masechet Peah Perek Gimel Mishnah Gimel. Over here in this Mishnah, we're going to discuss harvesting onions to sell and to store, and then we'll move on to speak about also a vineyard. So Rambam is going to be a little bit unique in this Mishnah. I'll explain as we go forward. המחליק בעצים נחים לשוק ומקיים יבשים לגורן. נותן פאה לאלו לעצמן ולאלו לעצמן. וכן באפונים. וכן בחרם המדל, that's how Rambam would read it, נותן מן המשוער על מה ששיער. המחליק מאחת יד, נותן מן המשוער על הכל. So המחליק בעצים נחים לשוק. Over here, he is cutting. Rambam explains this as cutting. He quotes Yeshayahu, mahalik patish, right? This is someone who's, harvesting, he's cutting. That would be the verb for onions. To sell in the shuk, he's going to take it to the shuk, and he's going to keep the dry ones, right? The non-fresh ones, he's going to dry them out for the garden for his storage house. Mahalik over here, and Rambam explains this cutting. You should just know that Rabbeinu Obadiah Batinor brings two different pirushim, both different. One he quotes Anochi ish halak, right, from Yaakov. He's talking to Yitzhak, right? So like smooth, right? So when you pick the onions from the field, the ground over there stays smooth. And the other pirush that Batinor brings is when a person takes the onions. Right, mahalik moha mehalik. Right, he's going to take a piece of it. Halek is taking here and halek there. Portion here, portion there. But Rambam is simply saying that that's the verb used for harvesting onions. Mahalik betzalim. So what's the din over here? He gives a peah for each. Right, one peah for the ones that he's taking to the shuk, and the second peah for the drier ones that he's keeping in the garden. Right, he can't give one peah for everything. He needs to give two separate peahot. V'chen ba'afunim. Right, also similar when it comes to afunim. Afunim are chickpeas. In the Arabic, it's the hummus, right? Hummus. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it in Arabic, but it's hayt mem sading, right? So it's a hummus, a chickpea. Now, v'chen becherem hamedel, right? And Rambam over here calls it a kerem hamedel, which means a vine that a vine that's thinned out, right? So it's a thinned out vine, right? Dal, poor, right? It's poor. And what happens over here? He takes some over there he picks some in derech arai, right? In order to take, to sell, to do what he wants with it. And he's leaving the rest over there to keep growing. And over here, the law is that if he's taking it just, sporadically across, all sides of the vineyard, he gives one peah, right? Only on what's left over. He does not need to give peah on those ones that he picked, b'derech arai, right? That is patur from peah, and he just has to give from what's left over on the balance, right? So now we need to explain what is v'chen becherem hamedel. Right? What's similar? How is that similar to the Reisha, the first half of the Mishnah? So I would say it's similar in regards that you don't have to give one peah on everything, right? And you're not giving one peah on the whole field, right? The first half of the Mishnah, you give, one peah for here and one peah for there. In the Kerem HaMedel, similarly, you don't have to give one peah on the whole field. Rather, you give only a peah for what's left over. Right? I think that's what Bechen Becherem HaMedel means. But if you're mahalik me'achat yad, right? If you're harvesting, right, from one side, right? You're taking it from the entire side, the entire eastern side, the entire western side, then noten mina meshuar al hakol. And then in that case, you need to give peah on the entire field, right? Whatever you left over, you need to give peah. You need to cover yourself for the entire field. So that's the way how Rambam explains this Mishnah. When he spoke about kerem hamedel, right? That is a weakened, a thinned out vine, right? So the word medel is an adjective, right? Of explaining what type of kerem it is. It's a thinned out kerem. You should note, though, that Bartenura would punctuate this differently. A lot of Mefarshim will punctuate this differently. And they would read it as מחליק בעצים מלכים לשוק, ומגשים לגון, נותן פאה לאלו לעצמן ולאלו לעצמן, וכן באפונים וכן בכרם, right? Similar to chickpeas, and similarly to a vine, right? To a vineyard, period. And then they say hamedel, if someone is thinning out, right? In any of them, thinning out onions, thinning out chickpeas, or thinning out a vine, right? All three of those cases, and the word medel over here is a verb, not an adjective. It's right. Period. Now hamedel, and that's something else over here. If you're thinning out something, as opposed to the first half where you weren't thinning out, where you were literally, cutting, a bigger area. Over here, when you're thinning out, then noten mina mishwara mashashir, and that verb is actually going back on, would be going back on all three. Yeah, so that's it. So it's just interesting how the way you put the period over here is really going to, have different perushim, whether it's Rambam or Bartenura. So that really sums up this Mishnah. Next Mishnah, we'll speak about if you're taking onions that are used for replanting, what do you do with those?